Well, I think there have been a number of positive actions that have resulted from that. There's been good and in many cases improved coordination in a variety of different areas, whether they're in supporting each other in investigative endeavors or in judicial actions or sharing of information, intelligence, and so forth. Each of these, I think, has been positive. And you've seen the results of some of this in a variety of different ways, but most particularly, I think, in the efforts to detain the senior figures, the senior leaders of some of the illegal narcotics empires, really is the accurate word for them. The security relations, I think, have always been an area that needs to be approached with sensitivity. There has been good partnership, and I think, in fact, growing partnership in a variety of different ways. I know that, for example, when General Jacoby, the soon-to-depart Northern Command commander, visited Mexico for a final time just in the last week or so, there was a very substantial ceremony to recognize that event, and that in itself spoke volumes about how far we've come in terms of building the military relationships. But the truth is that you have the same kinds of relationships in a variety of other areas, in the security space, in the, again, investigative community, information and intelligence sharing, but then more broadly, of course, in the economic sphere and the business sphere. Well, each country faces its own challenges. Certainly the United States has a host of different security issues that it has to deal with, as of course does Mexico, and certainly the senior leaders in Mexico with whom I've talked in recent weeks and months recognize and are intent on dealing with the challenges in the broader rule of law arena, and I think that's the way to describe that. Obviously there have been instances, tragedies really, recently in Mexico that have highlighted these challenges, and I think in many respects will prove to be catalysts for determined action on the part of the Mexican government, and I think also on the part of the Mexican people. Well, the security incidents in recent months in Mexico, I'm not sure that they put into risk the security cooperation. If anything, they probably highlight the need for greater security assistance from one to the other. I do think that the challenge is that the business community in the United States and elsewhere in the world could look at this and say perhaps we should pause for a moment in examining the opportunities that are so substantial in Mexico. I mean, we need to keep in mind the historic achievements of the Mexican executive and legislative branches together in approving 16 constitutional reforms in the first year alone of the new administration. That's more reforms, I believe, than were approved in the 18 years of the 3 previous presidencies. Not for lack of trying, but this actually came together. It's actually a great example for the rest of the world how an executive and legislative branch, they can come together and make extraordinary progress. And then the implementing legislation has been approved in the subsequent year. And Mexico is now poised on the threshold of implementing these many, many historic reforms, which we think gives great reason for optimism about Mexico, and as the U.S. economy is really reviving now with increasing strength, that the effect on Mexico can also be beneficial, and that all of this together presents extraordinary time for Mexico and has enormous promise. But that promise can only be fully realized if the context in which investments and business starts and various even social activity, exchange of education and so forth, if the context is sufficient for that. And of course, that context is shaped by the rule of law in any country, and that's why, again, I have recognized, been impressed by the seriousness of the Mexican leaders with whom I've talked about tackling these issues and about doing it over the long term. That clearly there has to be a response to this particular issue or that issue, but the bigger intent here and the bigger idea has to be to push it forward over years with determination, with resources, with the right theoretical constructs, and my sense is that readiness is present in Mexico right now.